Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Peek Behind the Curtain, the show where we go behind the scenes of some of your most recent SMSU theater productions. I am your host, Nick Dahlhoff, and I am joined by a couple of the stars of Anne of Green Gables. They are Elizabeth Zoya and Taylor Benson. Thank you guys so much for coming out here today.
Thank you for having us.
So just to get us started off here, why don't you guys tell us what roles you played in this production?
Yeah, so I'm Taylor Benson, and I played Anne Shirley.
I'm Elizabeth Zoya, and I played Josie Pye.
So one of the things I learned kind of when I heard about this play coming to campus here was it turns out there's actually a lot of source material before this. I had not heard much about it, if anything, really, which was kind of good for me because then I went into the play completely unbiased or hadn't known much about it. But there's TV shows, there's past movies. What were some of the exposure you guys had going into this performance?
So much like you, I barely had any exposure to Anne of Green Gables. Obviously, I knew it was very popular, but before the audition, I had just read a brief synopsis of the show to kind of understand what it was about because I wasn't auditioning for any certain character. So I just kind of read what the show was about, and then after the cast list came out and we had our first read through and all that, I started watching the TV show and with an E, and then started watching the movies, and then the movies that my best friend's mom got me, which is Anne of Green Gables, the continuing story, and yeah.
As a kid, I read the books, or the first book in particular. It's a pretty old copy. My great aunt had given it to me as a gift one year, and it was a book that she had read a lot as a kid, so she thought I'd enjoy it. And so that was a long time ago. I was probably about 8 years old when I read the book, so I had barely remembered it by the time that it was announced that we were doing this show, but I had known it enough to be like, oh yeah, I remember enjoying this book as a kid. Once the rehearsal process started, I looked up my character Josie Pye, just kind of getting to know who she was as a character, as well as during one of the rehearsals we watched the movie.
Mhm.
What were some of the things you noticed about the movie that maybe influenced your guys' portrayal of the characters? Or was there some things that you watched and you're like, I'm going to do maybe a little bit different?
So when I watched the movie, personally, I thought Anne was very calm and mature, and the way she kind of handled things. I watched the beginning of the movie on my own time because a lot of us, we were in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, which is our drama club production this year, and rehearsals kind of overlapped. So we were only able to watch the tail end of the movie. So I watched the beginning of the movie on my own, and I noticed she was just very calm and almost sophisticated in a way. And the way I thought of portraying Anne was kind of give her more of a maturity arc throughout the show. So I more played not a bratty little girl, but just this very over the top kind of preteen orphan girl that kind of matures and finally gets out of her own imagination towards the end.
Yeah, with Josie Pye, after reading the script for the first time, I was like, all of her lines are just very nasty. None of them are I don't think she says a single nice thing to anyone.
My favorite was, "At least I'm not an orphan living
Living
on charity."
Best line ever. That and that she'd have almost killed you, Gilbert. That's another good one. Yeah, I think the only person she's ever really nice to is Gilbert, and that's just because she likes him.
Yeah.
Which is why she doesn't like Anne, because
Gilbert likes Anne.
Yeah. I'm actually glad you brought that up. One of the things I noticed on one of my viewings is I looked at the character of Josie Pye and I was like, she's like the Regina George of pioneer times
Yeah,
almost.
she really was, and I think that's why she dislikes Anne so much, is because Anne threw a wrench in she kind of owned the school originally.
Yeah, everyone likes Anne right away.
Right away. They went from kind of following Josie's lead to just being like, oh, Anne is actually nice to us. And she's not annoying and nasty. But with researching Josie's character, she really is just a product of her environment. Because her parents aren't necessarily stopping her from being this nasty kind of character.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, we look at high school dramas nowadays, I feel like there's a lot of parallels to that, just different setting,
Definitely.
this pioneer time.
I mean,
For sure.
I mean, even though the play takes place in, 1904?
Very early 1900s.
It's still there's things that people nowadays can even relate to still.
What were some of your guys's? You mentioned kind of a few of them. What were some of your favorite parts of the play? Whether it was something that you liked watching some of your co-stars do, or maybe it was one that you kind of perform. It was your favorite scene you looked forward to in rehearsals or during the performance.
I'll start. One of my favorite scenes, I have quite a few. But one of my favorite scenes was at the end of the first school scene, where I hit Gilbert over the head, quote unquote,
Yep.
with a slate. Um, the original plan is we were gonna have a breakaway slate that just kind of like breaks in half as I like hit it over his head. But towards like the middle, I think, of dress
Yeah.
rehearsal or beginning of dress rehearsal, um, Mike pulled me aside and was like, "Okay, this is how we're gonna do it." And it ended up just me hitting his forearm. And actually, one night, I hit his forearm so hard and at like such a perfect angle that the slate like cracked in half.
It was super loud.
Were you
Um,
able to recover the slate, or did you have to get a new slate then at that point?
I just hit him with the slate a different way the next night because this was on Friday night, so it was like 2 nights to
Oh, so
closing.
this was during one of the performances.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
geez.
This was on Friday, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Friday.
Friday. And so the next night I just hit it the other way, didn't hit it as hard, and then closing night I was given permission to try and break the slate, and I kind of did. I was able to peel
Yeah.
off
Now,
the
were you
top
given
part.
this permission by Gilbert, or was this?
I was given this permission by our director and stage manager.
But Zaire was all for it.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
he was
definitely.
excited. One of my favorite things was eating the brownies. I ate like 20
Were those
pieces
real
of-
brownies? by
Yes,
then?
they were.
They were real
Okay, I
brownies.
couldn't tell from
I
where
was
I was
very
sitting.
Oh, they
jealous
were-
because they were right in front of my face and I couldn't eat any of
And
them.
I just, it's like with the character that I was, she just keeps eating them. Like there's
Yeah.
no break. And so like trying to say my lines with like a bunch of brownies like shoved in the back of my cheeks was like one of the hardest things to
I
do.
love the part where you say some people
So
have
have
no self-control, and I just
Yeah.
like look at you, look at the brownies, and look back at you.
She just is eating them still.
That's impressive. I didn't know those were real brownies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
they're
you're
real
still
brownies.
that's impressive.
They're
Nice.
those like little bite brownies
Yeah.
split into 4s.
Yeah, there was, I think they were about like the size of probably like a puck, like a hockey puck. Probably I think the original
Probably
size.
not even. Honestly, the originals are probably the size of a golf ball.
I thought they were bigger than that. I don't know. I didn't cut them up. That was Allie's job.
And they were like cut into 4s, so they were like
Yeah.
about the size of like a nickel.
Yeah, I cut them up to about the size of a nickel, and then I just ate. It was really hard finding the brownies because I have a peanut allergy, and
Oh, yeah.
so Mike had to find a production
Yeah.
that didn't make it with any peanuts nearby.
That's
or
why we
anything.
use like the little bites because those are like
Mhm.
very kid like oriented.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of looking at the flip side of that coin, talked about favorite stuff. What were some of the most difficult challenges, whether it was something to do with the set or any sort of that pre-production, or is there just like a scene that was really challenging?
Okay, so at the very end, his original line, Gilbert's original line at the very end is just carrots, because he calls me carrots at the beginning of the show when he first meets Anne. We ended up changing that because it was like kind of awkward. We ended up changing that to I like carrots, kind of implying that he likes Anne. And the way he would say it when we first changed it was the funniest way.
It was just
Like-
we would compare it to like Forrest Gump. Like I
Like-
like carrots.
I like carrots. It was just so funny and so awkward that we had to run that scene so many times.
Like we were taking like everyone else who's in the scene, because in the last scene everyone comes out on stage and kind of surrounds them.
And we changed it to like the couple days before
Yeah.
opening too, so we had it completely different.
Yeah,
so
'cause it kind of-
literally everyone was
Yeah.
like circling Anne and Gilbert at this point rather than like kind of all over
Little
the place.
families and such. And we ended up just like taking naps on stage as he worked this line out like 20 sometimes.
It's not like SNL where you can break and the crowd cheers you for it. Essentially, it's a pretty
No.
emotional ending. and
Yeah,
everything.
right.
Yeah.
Any other challenges you guys remember, or
Personally, I'm a very clumsy person, and especially so 2 instances where I hit the bed with my shin was opening night. It was the one scene right before Marilla, right before I apologized to Mrs. Lind and have my huge like, woe is me, please forgive me speech. I walked down to like the foot of the bed and I hit my left shin on like, so metal bed frames have like the dull side of the frame and then the sharp side of the frame on the corners. I hit my shin on the dull side that night. Closing night, I was walking out to go get the pearls from Matthew, and I hit my right shin on the sharp side, and now there's a wicked bruise on my right shin with a little bit of a scab. So that's really fun. So definitely like managing my clumsiness was a hard part because my foot also got caught on one of the like raised parts in the
Right.
archway
Oh yeah.
um on Saturday night, which was really funny because my dad was watching that night too, and he always comments on my clumsiness.
Oh no.
And then a couple times backstage running in to get carried in for the roof scene,
Yeah.
I would trip over the rug on stage left so many times, like as I like got right behind the curtain, that I was like, I'm not gonna make it because I almost fell.
Oh my god.
So
I think some of the challenging parts for Josie is I was put into scenes where I didn't have lines, and it obviously there's a lot of scenes that I wouldn't have lines in, but there's scenes that I thought that like, what is this character doing? Because it's
Yeah.
like the Camelot scene.
yeah,
I'm in the Camelot scene, which is like a bunch of the girls just hanging out having a fun time with Anne, and I'm like, what's my character thinking?
yeah,
Like,
it's
what
like
is she going through? Why
you
is
almost
she
need to like
with
make
them?
a story as to
Right.
why your character is there and like what's their purpose in this scene.
Right. It's like,
From
oh,
what I know about Josie, she probably wanted Anne to drown.
oh yeah. No, when
She's the one that put the hole in
She
the
was
boat.
the one who- there we go.
probably. I always make the joke that I'm the one who pushed Anne off the roof. She didn't fall on accident. I pushed her. She pushed
Oh,
me.
and she was just like covering for you
She's
or something like
covering
that?
or something,
Oh.
yeah. But yeah, for like the boat scene when she says I think there's a hole.
I think the boat is
I think
leaking.
the boat is leaking. I'm just like I just roll my eyes. I think that's like the consistent thing I've always do. Whenever there's a line that I just don't know how she'd react, I just like roll my eyes. It's like stop being so dramatic. It's not that bad. Sure,
It's
you
not like you'll
broke-
drown.
It's not
or
like you're
anything.
drown. And then like when we come back in, once she's been saved by Gilbert, the entire time when like they're like, oh Gilbert this,
I
Gilbert
love
that. She's
watching
just-
your reactions to that when I
she's
say, and Gilbert Blythe rode by on Miss
just-
Orange's boat and brought me to land. You're like,
why is she with him again? Or when she says, I'll never talk to Gilbert again, I do like the solid nod. Like, yes, good. You'll never talk to him again.
Well, that sound means it's time for intermission. So we're going to take a quick break here and kind of talk about 1940s Radio Hour. That's the next production coming up here for the SMSU Theater Department. Elizabeth, why don't you give us a little synopsis, kind of what 1940s Radio Hour is all about?
So 1940 Radio Hour is a jukebox musical, so all the music in it is like music from the 1940s. And it's like more of a karaoke-like thing versus like these songs have like a story arc to them. And it's exactly kind of what it sounds like. It's basically kind of like you're looking behind the scenes of a radio show. That the show itself isn't the most popular, but everyone in it very much thinks so very highly of themselves. And it's like, yes, we are this, and we are going to put a good show, whether or not there's 0 people listening or 1 million. And it's like it's their first. It's supposed to. It takes place like 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor has been bombed. So it's like a lot of people have been drafted to the war. So a lot of the monologues and things like that are like like characters reading letters to the people off at sea, and one of their own people who is there has just been recently drafted, and we talk about that in the show, and each kind of character goes throughout their own little story and has their own little life that's happening.
isn't it like kind of like a Christmas
Yeah.
radio hour? Yeah.
So it's December 21st, I believe, is the day that it takes place. So I think it's like about 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor.
I know I'm looking forward to this one a lot. Obviously, I'm in broadcasting digital media, so this sort of stuff really interests me. I didn't know a lot of that backstory there. That just kind of intrigues so much more, I think. The show comes out December 12th through the 15th. That's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with a Sunday matinee, so only out for one weekend. You're going to want to make sure you check that one out.
Come early because we have a pre-show thing that we do. So like while everyone's getting seated and stuff, there's action happening on stage.
Any tips of how early they have to come in, or?
So doors open, I believe, at 7. So
about half an hour before the show.
Oh, so it's a
is when
whole
house
half
will
an
open.
hour pre-show thing.
Yep.
Wow, that's really interesting. I like that. That's pretty clever. So one of the things I noticed was the character of, I believe it was Moody, Paul's character.
yeah.
One of the running gags, I think especially in the second act, was how his character's afraid he's going to fail the history
Mhm.
part of it.
Yeah.
I have to ask, was that in the script, or did you guys add that?
No, that was actually in the
That's-
script.
That was
in the
actually in the
Yep.
script.
And what makes it even funnier is that Paul is a history
Is it?
major.
That's why I thought it was
Yeah.
improv. I was
Nope.
willing to bet
Nope.
money that you guys added that in.
Nope, that
Just
was written in the
specifically.
script, and it's just kind of
It's
Wow.
worked out
It
like
just worked
that.
out, yeah.
Well, in that case, was there any sort of improv things or added jokes that you guys would
Um,
put in or stuff like
there
that?
was like a couple of changed lines. Like I know the biggest one that I remembered was Mrs. Lynn's. It's like the original line is if you want my opinion, I'm sure you don't. We changed it to if you want my opinion, and I'm sure you do. Just because the girl playing Mrs. Lynn felt that was more of her character. What were there? Any like other big ones that we changed? We changed one to match like the description of my blue dress. I know that.
Yeah.
Because it used to be what about the pink?
I
Like,
don't know. Was it?
can't remember what fabric it was, but what about the pink dress? We changed that to blue plaid because my dress was a blue plaid.
Yeah. Improv lines though.
I don't think there was any big ones.
Yeah, I know we changed a lot of the lines were supposed to be spoken to the audience, like
Oh,
little side
yes.
stuff.
Yes. We
But
changed that because
think-
it seemed just kind of unnatural, so we
Yeah.
just kind of changed that around a little bit.
Yeah, we changed that like a week I think before we opened, but it was
Yeah.
an easy change because everyone else had already kind of started saying it to people on stage because it just felt
More
unnatural.
natural.
Yeah.
Fourth wall breaking is a really challenge
To like do.
to do in movies, TV, or even stage performances too. So
Another big one would be like the Camelot scene.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know if you would like consider that like an improv one because there were two versions of the scene in the actual script. There's one version of the scene where you actually have a boat on stage and like you can see the process of like Anne kind of sinking in the river. And then the one that we did was Anne is off stage and then you kind of have to like imagine that like the boat is out. But actually my family thought I was out in the audience like on a boat during that scene. Like they kept looking behind them because of like where you guys were looking during
Yeah.
that scene. They came up to me, they're like, were you out in the audience during that scene? Because like the way they were looking at like the rows, it made it seem like you were in the audience.
I can't even imagine how fast you'd have to run to get from the audience
my
back
gosh.
to
Oh, yeah.
backstage.
Even like running
for that
backstage
next
after
bit.
like my like losing Diana scene and then the roof scene, even like running backstage was
Yeah.
crazy fast.
I think that's your quickest
That was my
run.
There was
quickest
a couple I
transition.
noticed where I feel like a couple characters really had to get from point A to point B because the one thing I noticed is the plot moves really
Yes,
fast
it
in the
does.
show.
Yes.
It feels like almost years just go by like that almost,
Yes.
and it really shows off kind of just you guys will exit
Yep.
from the back door of the house and all of a sudden you're almost
I'm on the other side of the
transported
stage. Yep.
on the other side there. So
Yeah.
For sure.
It especially like felt like that with quick changes, at least for like me personally, because there was one scene when me and Diana run off as soon as the test results come out. I need to be changed into that blue plaid dress. So as I'm running behind the scrim, I'm taking out my braids. I'm like unbuttoning the top of my dress, and I like sprint. As soon as I get over there, they unzip my boots so I can step into my like heeled boots, and then the dress comes like off over my head. And the other one goes right over my head, and then I'm like doing my hair while they're zipping up the dress while the girl who plays Diana, Aviana, she's grabbing the hairbrush and the ribbon and my rose prop. And then, like, pretty much as soon as we're done zipping up that dress, we're right back on stage.
Yeah.
And then another one is the train scene at the very end, the ending train scene, right before I go off to Queens. That one was
Yeah, especially
very difficult.
especially for you. I
yeah.
mean, it was a quick change for me and Allie as well, but we still had like that.
I was going to
one
say, you had, like,
scene.
that entire
We
scene,
had the entire
too.
scene.
I had about 11 lines, I think, is
Yeah,
when I counted.
you had about equivalent to about 30 seconds of
Not
time.
even, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, so I had to like take off the blue dress very, very quickly. Like they were literally right behind the curtain and like the eyesight of the audience,
Yeah.
like just waiting for me to like run off stage with Paul.
Yeah.
And as soon as like the dress came on, I stepped into the skirt. The shirt came on. I buttoned the shirt with help from Lily Tabaka, and they would take the skirt up, they would clasp it, I would get the bow on
Yep.
my neck, tuck in the shirt, and then I'm back on stage.
Yeah. I think originally, didn't you have a wig that you were gonna
Yes,
wear?
I had a wig, and that did not work out very well.
No, did not have enough time.
I'm almost picturing like a NASCAR style pit crew.
Pretty
sort of
much.
scenario
It
where you
really
just kind of
was.
pull in, 15 seconds later you're back out.
Pretty
again and
much.
everything.
It's how it feels because a lot of times it's like you're not doing any of the work. You're just
Oh,
standing
that's
there.
definitely how it felt for like 90% of my quick changes,
Yeah.
except for that very last one, because that very last one I had to button it to make it go by faster. But like every other one, I literally just stood there with my arms up, Well, they were like, all right, let's go.
I don't even like it when my mom has opinions on what I'm wearing for the day. I can't even imagine people like literally changing my clothes or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Theater kids have no self.
I was gonna say honestly, like all like self-confident or not
What's
self-confidence.
the word?
What? No,
Self-consciousness?
insecurities. All insecurities really need to go out the window when
Yeah.
like you're in a show like this, especially with as many quick changes as we have backstage, not just for me, but for like
Right.
almost every single character
Mhm.
except for like
So-
two, honestly.
Yeah, two.
Two or three.
Yeah.
Like-
You kind of just take away that like, oh, these people are seeing me half naked, and it's
Yeah.
going on so fast that you don't even notice. You're like, okay, you're
And like we weren't even like honestly, there was barely any skin showing. Like we had corsets,
Right.
tights, bloomers. We
Mhm.
had like
Spanx.
spandex suits.
Yeah. I think
Like
the only thing about it is it's like it is all skin tight, so you still
like
see
the illusion
the illusion of everything
of it, but like there was really like nothing showing. So that
Yeah.
also really helped with like the comfort level,
yeah.
which is nice.
But there definitely is some shows where you're basically just in
Oh, yep.
bra
I've
and
definitely been in
underwear, and
shows
you're
like
just
that.
off and on. And you're
Definitely
like,
been in shows like that. That was 100% me and Thoroughly Modern Millie
Yeah.
for one of my quick changes. It was really
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
and when I was in show choir in high school, we had a quick change where we came out of one dress and was put on another. And I remember one of my friends, his name is Nahi, he would just go and he was like a chorus line of just zip, zip,
Zip,
zip, zip, zip, zip, zip, zip.
That's what I love about theater productions, especially is, you know, if I go out and do like a film production, if something doesn't go right or something, we can
You can just
redo
reshoot.
it
Yeah.
and whatever. But you guys have to do it correct live every
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
You know, if something like during those quick changes, like where all of a sudden a button doesn't quite go,
Yep.
your options are either this character's coming out late, which is almost never an option, or
Mhm.
we're just gonna have to hope no one notices this weird button thing or something
That's
like
definitely happened to me.
The blue dress. So
yeah, the
many
blue dress
times.
actually. I actually have a couple stories. Then. The blue dress, the very first 2 nights of the show. This was during a show. This happened a couple times during dress rehearsal too, but it was dress rehearsal. But during a show, like the first 2 nights, my blue dress zipper broke right before I went on stage, so my entire like back was showing with like the corset and all that. So when I went to go hug Marilla and Matthew at the very end of that scene, I would literally like hug Marilla and then I turned towards the audience and like kind of side hug Matthew because I was like nobody can see, and like
No one
obviously
can
they see
know.
it when I walk to the kitchen because I can't like walk backwards.
Yeah.
Another one was my pink blouse and my brown skirt before
Yeah.
the second weekend of shows. We had very small clasps on it at first, which were very, very hard to clasp. Then we had to add a ribbon on it, which kind of helped. That helped a lot. But like you could still see like my petticoat and then like the bloomers underneath it and like that small little triangle. And then sometimes like the shirt wouldn't be buttoned all the way because we'd like miss a couple buttons. Or one night I buttoned it completely like off, so I had to change that backstage before the very last scene.
Oh wow.
And there'd be times where like the skirt just like wouldn't clasp like the first couple of times we did the change. So as soon as I like came off stage from that train scene, like about 10 seconds before we go on stage for the brownie scene, like the dressers and like myself would just be trying to clasp it in the back and like trying so hard to get it like to where it looks decent. And sometimes I wouldn't even get it until like that last scene.
Yeah.
I think that was a majority of like my
Yeah. Your quick changes.
bad ones.
I know for me, so the first weekend, so I changed into it from my like really frilly kid dress into a like a slim green skirt. And the first weekend, it always had been like a little big on me, but nothing too extreme. Like it still like stayed up on my hips. But the second weekend, I don't know if they started tying my corset tighter or what.
Yeah.
It just became like twice the original size.
Mhm.
And we could never get the clasps to stay because when I would relax again, it would unclip itself because it was so loose. And so I'd go on stage for the brownie scene, and it was like I could feel it slowly falling off, and I'm like, this cannot fall off on stage.
Yeah.
And we eventually just got some safety pins, and we would just safety pin it tight so that it wouldn't fall off. But it almost fell off. I think it was like Friday night.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, "Oh no!" Like, I don't know how to save this if this does fall off. I don't know what to do.
Right. I was like, I'm ready to just get completely embarrassed and just have it. Just
My
fall.
corset had to be tied like so incredibly tight. There was a couple nights where it like almost felt a little too tight in areas,
Yeah.
which is like it obviously worked very, very well for the change,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of like mobility,
Yeah.
it was very difficult to make everything kind of look natural even when the corset wasn't tied too tight.
Mm-hmm.
and like kind of just honestly catch my breath, especially when I'm running back and forth
Right.
backstage.
I know for some people, like, if that corset was not tied on tight, you couldn't get their outfits
No,
on.
that's exactly what mine was. If my corset was not tight enough, that brown skirt would not fit and that pink shirt would not fit. Like I wouldn't have had a good closing costume if that corset was not tight enough
Yeah.
at all. Because that's what happened the first night of dress when I had to
Mhm.
hold, is the corset wasn't tight enough, so the skirt wasn't able to clasp very well or very easily, and the pink shirt was like, it looked like it was like I was gonna bust out of it.
Right.
That night also kind of broke the pearls.
Oh, that's
And then
right.
there was a collar on the dress.
Didn't it? No, it broke off stage, didn't it?
It broke off stage
remember
because there was a
that.
collar on that blue dress. We ended up cutting the collar because it was just a little bit easier for the change, and so you could see the pearls. But the first night, I tried to take off the collar, and then all of a sudden, like the pearls just kind of snapped off my neck,
Yeah.
and
We
I
had
like
trouble getting
I was
those pearls on.
freaking out. But we got it figured out the next night. We got
Right? Didn't you guys like stay after that night to like practice it? Yeah.
yeah.
I was going to say, that's one of the greatest things about those little technical difficulties or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you learn and you figure out
Yep.
more.
Yeah.
You figure out how to adjust it, and
Yeah.
then it doesn't usually happen again.
Yeah, like
for
as
that.
a show went on, I had more and more time before I had to go on for the train scene to the
Mhm.
point where I was like, I shouldn't be having this much time. We missed something.
What's wrong? What am I
I was
missing?
like, I had
Yeah.
all my props in my hand. Everything was like perfectly like clasped and like clipped and all that. Like especially like closing night. I had so much time before I went on stage, and I was like, we're missing something.
Yeah.
What are we missing? And we
Those,
weren't
those are
missing
almost the moments
anything.
I hate when we're doing our live sports productions, when everything's going perfectly well.
It's like
You
it's-
just sit there a second, like, okay, we're forgetting something.
Yeah.
What's
Something's gonna
missing?
go
What's
wrong.
missing?
Yep.
Why
Yeah.
why is everything going good right now? It
Exactly.
shouldn't be
Right.
happening. And with that, it is now time for the curtain call, where we wrap things up. I would like to once again thank my guests for joining me. If you like what they do, go and support them by seeing 1940s Radio Hour. That premieres December 12th and runs to the 15th, so go check it out. If you want to check out some of their other future shows, be on the lookout for posters for Take Two Improv. They will be having a show later this year around finals time. On behalf of both my guests and myself, my name's Nick Dahlhoff. Thank you for taking a peek behind the curtain.